Bismillah Rahman Rahim. In this short video, we will discuss about hypothesis testing by t-test. So here we will answer some of the questions like where we have to apply the t-test and why we are using t-test, and like if we see that there are different type of t-test, which t-test would be appropriate according to the different scenarios, according to different problem statements, how we can formulate different hypotheses from these scenarios, and then how we can decide either we have to apply one tail t-test or two tail t-test. So why we are using t-test? Because we know that there are a lot of the statistical analysis. It depends, just like ANOVA test, t-test, or a different type of test. So where we have to apply the t-test? Actually, t-test is a statistical test that is used to compare the means, right? So when we have the data sets and when we are going to find the comparing two data sets and we have to find the means or differences, then we have to apply the t-test. In this one, to determine if there is a differences are statistical significant or no. So normally it should have two values where we can compare the values. Always when we are comparing the values, that means we should have two groups. So here we can see which type of test according to the different data sets. So how we can decide which t-test would be appropriate according to these scenarios. So here we will discuss there are three different t-tests. One sample t-test, paired t-test, and independent or unpaired t-test. Okay, so here first we will see which t-test is appropriate for data sets. We have different type of the problems, questions, scenarios. So how we can decide either we have to apply one sample t-test or independent sample t-test or paired sample t-test. So because t-test is used for to compare, to find out the meaningful differences between these two data sets or no. If we have the only one sample, sometimes we have only one sample data sets, and to whom we can compare the values. So we can compare the values of one sample with the population mean. If we are given this is the population mean and we have, and this is the sample data, then we are going to find the mean difference with the population and sample means. So for that scenario we have to use one sample t test, because actually we have only one data sets and we are comparing our data sets with the population mean. And then if we have the first come to the paired sample t-test. If we have the two groups and same group but two different values, here that means we are taking the values at two different times. That means before some time we are taking the values, after some time in morning or evening, before treatment, after treatment. So this type of data sets would be known as the paired sample t-test. For this type of scenarios we have to apply paired sample t-test. For independent sample t-test, same, we have the two different data sets, but it belongs to two totally different groups. Before it was like before and after, but here they are totally two different. Like means the one, the patient who are taking some different type of treatment, and another group that is taking different type. So when we have compare the differences between these two groups, then it would be known as independent sample t-test. So that means it depends upon the scenarios, problem, what we have data sets, according to that, so we can decide which t-test is appropriate for these data sets to find out the mean differences between them, right? For example, here we will come to one scenario. A researcher wants to determine if the average salt concentration in soil samples from a coastal region is significantly different from the standard salinity level of 5. The researcher collects 30 soil samples and measure their salt concentrations. So this is like the statement, the question. So here how we can decide? First of all, here you see in the first line we are going to find the average, right? So that means we have to find the mean differences. That means we have to apply the t-test. So next question is, which t-test is appropriate? Here we see that we have mentioned the researcher collected 30 soil samples. So there is only one data samples, 30 samples, and measure their salt concentrations. But we have to check that the differentially from the standard salinity level of 5. So all soil samples, that means this is the population mean, and this is the sample. No, we have only one sample data sets, and but the population mean difference is given. So that means we have to select one sample t-test. And basically the formula to find out the t-test for one sample is x bar minus mu s by total number of n. Here you can find the t value for one sample t-test, right? So, for example, if we ask that how we can formulate the hypothesis from one sample t-test. Normally, hypothesis, because we have only one sample data set, so we can formulate the hypothesis like the null hypothesis should be sample mean is equal to population mean. So here we will see sample mean is equal to population mean, and alternative hypothesis sample mean is not equal to population means. If we will see if the null hypothesis is rejected or fail to reject the null hypothesis, to see if there is a meaningful differences between sample mean and population mean or no. From the previous questions, so what will be the null hypothesis? So because there is a mention that the average salinity of the soil sample is different from 5 or no, right? So the null hypothesis, we know that there should be always a equal to sign. So first of all, sample mean is equal to population mean or no. The mean mu is equal to 5, that is the population mean. And the alternative hypothesis, the average salinity of the soil sample is different from 5. This is like the statement, alternative hypothesis. That means not is equal to 5. So it can be possible that like in the statement it is less than, it is greater than. So here they didn't mention anything, so it is like different from that, not equal to. So from here you can formulate the hypothesis, that is like one sample t-test. Scenario second. So here a scientist wants to evaluate the effectiveness of biofertilizer on plant growth. 10 plants are measured for height before applying the biofertilizer and again after 2 months. The goal is to determine if the biofertilizer significantly increases plant height. Now we are going to find out the significance difference in the plant height or no. So here they mention that 10 plants, these are the values of 10 plants, but they are taking the values before applying the biofertilizer and again after 2 months. So we just have to find the plant height differences within these 2 months, before the biofertilizer and after the fertilizer. So that means we have two values. So values of 10 plants before the fertilizer and after the biofertilizer. So that means we have the pair data where we see that like the same group but different timing, and we are going to find the significantly difference in plant height. That means we are going to apply the t-test but the pair t-test, right? And the formula would be same, but the difference is the d. If you see that d, that is the difference before and after. Okay, so how we can formulate the hypothesis from this one? Normally, we are comparing means of two related samples, two paired samples, before and after. So hypothesis would be like mean differences is equal to 0, mean differences is not is equal to 0. Either we can also say that before is, the mean before is equal to mean after. That means the zero, both are equal, no difference. And in alternative hypothesis, we can say that mean before is not is equal to mean after. That means there is a some meaningful difference between them, not equal to, right? Null hypothesis, there is if you convert into the statement, there is no significant difference in plant height before and after applying the biofertilizer. That means mean before is equal to mean after the biofertilizer. The alternative hypothesis, there is a significant difference in plant height before and after applying the biofertilizer. That means the mean before is equal to not equal to after. It may be possible that in the statement it is mentioned that it is reduced or less than or greater than, then you can use that symbol. Not equal to, greater than, or less than, these are the symbol for alternative hypothesis. Like equal to, this is symbol used for the null hypothesis. Okay, now we come to the third scenario. A researcher wants to compare the root lengths of plant grown in the saline soil versus non-saline soil to assess the effect of salinity on plant growth. Two independent groups of plants, every n is equal to 15 each, are measured after 4 weeks. So there are two different groups. Unpaired, two independent group of plants having the 15 plants, they are grown in the saline soil, and the different one non-saline soil. So we have to find out the root lengths of plants. That means we are comparing their root lengths. That means we are applying the t-test. Another thing is that, so both groups are different. That means unpaired t-test would be used, or you can say the independent t-test. How we can formulate the hypothesis from here? Normally the compare means of two independent groups, so we can say that in general form mean 1 is equal to mean 2 in null hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis, mean 1 not equal to mean 2. In the statements by using the previous example, so there is a no significant difference in root lengths between the plants grown in saline and non-saline soil. That means the the mean of saline is equal to mean of non-saline in null hypothesis. So in statement in alternative hypothesis, there is a significant difference in root length between the two groups. Between, you can mention then saline and non-saline. So mean of saline is not is equal to mean of non-saline. So these are the hypothesis, null and alternative hypothesis for two independent groups. So next question is how we can decide that either we have to use one tail t-test or two tail t-test. Before we have identified like what type of t-test would be appropriate. One sample, paired, unpaired. Next, now we will see that which two tail test or one tail test would be appropriate. So here, if we look into the alternative hypothesis, all three alternative hypotheses. The first one is alternative hypothesis, mean not is equal to 5. That means average soil salinity is different from the 5, right? So we are not sure about the direction. Either we have to go right side, either we have to go left side. So we are not sure about either the value is decreasing or increasing. For that scenarios, you can also see in the right figure. In that scenario, so you are not sure about the direction, that means you have to see in both tails. That is known as two tail t test. So normally in simple words, if you see that there is a symbol used not equal to, that means we are not sure about the direction, that means two tail test. If alternative hypothesis mean is greater than 12, that meaning plant height increases after applying the fertilizer. If you see these type of statements in scenarios in questions, increase, that means you have to formulate the hypothesis like mean is greater than 12. So here we are sure that the value is increasing. So we have to know about one direction, that is known as one tail test. Similarly, if you are see like the alternative, if root length in saline soil is shorter than in non-saline soil, so there is also an example. So then you can formulate the hypothesis mean is less than 10. So here we are also sure that the root length is shorter, the mean is decreasing, so we are sure that we have to go to the left side. So increase or decrease, that means we are sure about the direction, either we have to go to right side or left tail test, that means this is the one tail test. So from alternative hypothesis, from the symbolic representation, you can identify it, either you have to select two tail test or either it is one tail test. At the last, how we can interpret the hypothesis? First, like after applying the test, either you are applying the t test, z test, any type of test, then you have to interpret the hypothesis by using the p value, t value, f value. So in this one, in regarding to the t test, so we are going to actually we are finding the significant differences between two means. If we say that if the null hypothesis is rejected, it indicates a significant difference between the means. For example, sample mean is not is equal to population mean in one sample t-test. If alternative hypothesis is accepted, or you can say that fail to reject the null hypothesis, sorry. So then sample mean is equal not is equal to population mean, means there is a significant difference between them. And mean difference, like before and after not is equal to zero, that means there is a significant difference, mean one group is not having the same difference with the two, that means significant differences. If alternative hypothesis is okay, that means there is a significant difference. No significant difference if the null hypothesis is not rejected. We can say that failed to reject the null hypothesis. It indicates there is a no significant difference between the means. So that means the what is the actual the null hypothesis, that is sample mean is equal to population mean, means like both are equal. There is a no significant difference. Mean difference is equal to 0, that means before and after they are equal, that means there is no meaningful difference. Mean group 1 is same with the mean difference with the group 2, that means there is no significance between them. So this is all about the basics of like how we can determine t-test, how we can where we have to apply the t-test, and which t-test would be more appropriate, how we can formulate some like the basics of hypothesis, and how we can decide one tail two test t-test. Thank you so much.